This is the meeting of the Economic Development Commission. It's March 18th, 2025. And it is about 3 minutes after 4 p.m. and we're meeting in the McCloskey Conference Room, and this meeting was posted in accordance with the open door rules and regulations in the state. So first thing on the agenda is a roll call, and Vanessa, you want to start?
Vanessa McClary here. Liz Feidel here.
Liz. Kurt Zorn.
Isak Asari here.
Tim.
Tim Hankey, remote.
Okay, and we have some people. Well, how about the staff? How about that?
Sure. Jane Cooper-Smith, staff.
Dee DeLarosa, staff.
And would the people on Zoom like to introduce themselves?
Hi, I'm Margie Rice. I'm Corporation Counsel.
Margie.
Cool.
I'm Janine Betsy, and I'm Director of Tax Credit Development at G&B Glick Company.
I'm Adam Richter, Executive Vice President and General Counsel for the G&B Glick Company.
And would the other two individuals like to introduce themselves?
Hey, hi, I'm Pranav. I am just a student here at IU.
He's a student today.
Hey there.
Oh,
Good.
great.
Good.
Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Rishikesh, student here at IU.
Great. Great. Thanks for joining us. Okay. The next item on our agenda is approval of minutes from our February meeting.
May I offer a
Did you
comment
read
on
it?
the minutes?
Yeah.
So we had taken some pretty detailed minutes, and I ended up editing them down based on some best practices from the council office's liaison to boards and commissions. That was part of it. And then the other part was that we really shouldn't have called the meeting to order. And so Margie is here to talk to us a little bit about that. It used to be the city's practice to hold sub-quorum meetings, and we were allowed to share information but not take formal actions. And after a lawsuit that concluded in January, the judgment was that the city was in violation of sorry, Margie, help me out. I don't know exactly what we were in violation of, but we're no longer holding sub-quorum informational meetings.
Yeah, I can. So the council had a sub-quorum meeting, and a local reporter took issue with the fact that they had continued to have conversation even after it was known that they didn't have enough people, in person to have this meeting. It was a meeting in the McCloskey room. After that that litigation ended up getting, worked out, and the parties reached an agreement. But our advice going forward from legal is, unless there's an actual quorum, unless we meet the standards for having a meeting to have enough people there, we should not have a meeting. So the last meeting, there was not a majority to hold the meeting. So the best course of action going forward, since there wasn't a majority, you couldn't have a meeting, is to just stop and everybody disperse, and we'll come back together when we have a majority. Right. So minutes do now reflect that there was in fact no meeting because you didn't have a majority. There was informal conversation. We're not calling that a meeting because there wasn't a majority. So just going forward, it's true of every board or commission at the city. This is going to be our advice going forward. We'll make sure all the attorneys in legal are consistently providing that advice.
Margie,
so we apologize for not doing that last time.
Should we still approve the minutes or not approve the minutes since it wasn't a formal meeting?
Yeah, I think that you can. I think that the sort of memorandum that Jane prepared can be accepted. And so we're making a clear record that the EDC knows that there wasn't
Okay.
I'd like it in the record that you guys have accepted this, and I think I was online the last meeting. I think Anna Holmes had some conversations, but it was just, we just want to clear it up going forward. So on the record, we're saying there was no meeting the last time, there was no official action taken, and we just want the Economic Development Commission to to receive that and sort of accept it today.
Okay, thanks, Margie.
Mhm.
So in the spirit of Margie's comments, we do have minutes from, or at least a memorandum of what happened during our get-together in February. And I would entertain a motion to accept that memorandum.
I think that I need to make one more edit.
Sure.
I think that it's called meeting minutes still.
Okay.
And that I think you could approve them as is with the edit that they're called just a memorandum of the Economic Development Commission. Do you agree with that, Margie?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's fine. Yep, that works.
Motion to accept the memo as amended.
I'll second.
Yay.
Thanks. Sorry,
Any
roll call.
discussion? Tim, anybody else discussion?
No, thank you. I
Okay.
approve.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Yes, I wasn't there.
Okay,
Abstain.
all right. All right, so we took care of that, thank you. All right, and now that we have a quorum, we can actually do something we've wanted to do for the last two get-togethers, which is to elect officers for 2025.
We tried to do it, you know, we'd
That's
love
right.
to vote for the people who weren't here, make
That's
you
right.
do all the work.
I hear you. Didn't work out though, did it?
It didn't work out. Flaws.
So Jane, we have president, we have vice president, and then a secretary treasurer, is that right?
I believe a
Position.
secretary. I don't think we have a
Secretary, yeah,
treasurer.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Positions.
Yeah.
So, any people, well, anybody want to nominate anybody for any of those positions? How's that?
I see the evil eye there.
Don't all speak at once.
We'll make it easy on you. I promise.
I would say for the good of the order that Kurt is a fantastic president. And,
Very well stated.
And,
Set the standard right away.
and so I would motion that Kurt remain our president, really. I mean,
I
I
love
would
that.
second that.
Okay.
Okay.
we have a motion
He
in a
said,
second.
Okay.
How about for vice?
But we have to vote. We have a motion in a second.
We can
Chair.
do the whole. We can do the whole
Now you're
slate.
creating a slate.
We can do the whole
yes.
slate.
Yes.
More efficient that way.
Get him back, Kurt.
Well.
I think I've been a great vice president, and I'm happy to remain vice president.
Nothing like a self-nomination.
There you go.
I love it.
I think I heard Tim.
Tim, you okay with that?
Yes, I would motion that, please.
All right. And then for secretary.
For the record, I have no interest in secretary.
Would you want to be vice president? Just for the, I was assuming that nobody wanted to do any.
Did you get a second on
Yeah.
Esau's
Yes,
nomination?
Tim.
Oh, who was who
The
moved?
first was myself.
Oh, right.
I'm just trying to be
Glutton for
efficient.
punishment.
I'm trying to be efficient, he says.
I don't think there's a lot of heavy lifting with the
I mean, I'll be the secretary.
position.
No.
You want?
There's
How about
nothing
I
to
be
do.
secretary? You be vice president.
really nothing to do.
I wasn't trying to be anything.
How about I be secretary?
Vanessa, how
I'll be
about,
secretary and
would
you be vice
Would you
president.
be willing to serve as secretary?
No, she said no.
No.
It's
You
really,
want- Liz-
it's
Liz,
a
you
name
wanna-
only.
Liz-
Is it name only?
We
You
do
got it.
everything.
Okay, I'll be secretary. There you go. This name only. Don't come back later with something else. And
Oh, boy.
do we need to record that somewhere?
Exactly. It's on the record.
That's right.
It's on the record.
That's
It will be reflected in the minutes.
Okay. She's so reflective.
So, Jane, could you state the slate?
Was there
State
a
this-
second on?
Second.
Okay.
It was Tim and then Isak.
That's right.
Okay. So the slate is Kurt as president, Isak as Veep, and Vanessa as secretary.
Any discussion? How about a vote? All in favor? say
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? I think we have unanimity on this. Great. Thank you.
I'm glad that
Thank
for the
you.
record, the only person that actually does anything is the president, so they're,
I'll catch up on that right away.
That's make sure I have the agenda, that's all. I have to have the agenda, and I look at T and Jane, so. Okay, I'd like to move to new business, Part B. And I think we can do the two together after our informal discussion last time. For resolution 2501 and 2502, the Cambridge Square pilot and the Henderson Court pilot. So Jane, how would you like to proceed on this?
Yeah, I'll tee up the conversation and kind of summarize my memo, and then I will pass to Janine and Adam to dig into maybe the why a little bit more. So, and I'll try to do a thorough job describing this because we didn't have a meeting last month. This is our first official discussion on this item.
Yep.
So the Gene B. Glick Company has requested 2 pilots, payment in lieu of taxes agreements with the city of Bloomington. The first is for Cambridge Square, which is on Pete Ellis Drive, and the second is for Henderson Court Apartments. The pilot agreements fix the tax liability at a percentage of the baseline assessed value for a period of time with a 3% escalator year over year. This allows the developer to close their financing gap, and then it commits these sites to 45 years of affordability. So we feel really good about that. So the term of the agreement would be 17 years, and then the gain in affordability would be 45. Both are rehabilitation projects, which is important too. We're protecting these assets that exist, and we're making them nicer for the people who live there now and will live there in the future. And yeah, I think I'll just dig in a little bit to the differences in the building. I included in the memo some of the state code that establishes the pilot policy, which we're allowed to implement. You are allowed to recommend to council as an economic development commission. This type of pilot is for affordable housing, and these sites are both at 60% area median income and below. So the baseline requested payment for Cambridge Square would be $43,605 to start. The table that's included shows the 3% annual increase. It shows a flat amount for the original liability. So what it's saying what the tax liability was at the start of the pilot, what the pilot value is, and then what the overall reduced liability is. So what's the amount the city would be putting on the table without knowing future assessed value of the property. So at this amount, it would be $702,196, which ends up being over the life of the agreement at this calculation would be under it would be $4,500 per unit. And that is 153 bedrooms at that site. And then Henderson Court, on Cambridge Square, that's a 62 and up apartment living community. People can be 62 and over or differently abled. So they're all, I think, and Janine can talk about this more, or Adam, but I think they're all single story, so they're all highly accessible, which is great. And then Henderson Court, we've got 150 units that are 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. There are also HUD Section 8. They're at 60% AMI or below. Last renovated in 2008. The requested pilot payment baseline amount is $54,750 with a 3% annual increase. And then again in this table, the estimated tax liability, I'll just say this is Jane's number, so I just took what was reflected in the beacon and multiplied it by the appropriate tax rate. So this wasn't reflected anywhere because this project will be coming back on the tax rolls. So in order to facilitate this renovation, Glick is bringing in a for-profit partner into the capital stack, which means that they'll be losing that tax exempt status for their property tax. So this will be a payment that hasn't been received since whatever, when they initially established the project, and now they'll be coming onto the tax rolls, and so we'll see this as an added benefit. But for this project, because that baseline AV is so much higher, well, and I will say, in 2023, the AV was significantly lower. It increased by 51% from 2023 to 2024, but I used the higher 2024 numbers just because I think there was an adjustment at the assessor's office. There's no clear reason why the property value went up that high. And so at that rate, the total project support would be $1,033,000, and the individual projects or unit support would be under that $7,000 amount. So I think that's just it in a nutshell. I've communicated with the Director of Housing and Neighborhood Development. She deeply supports this project. We really find Glick to be a great partner in working in the affordable space in Bloomington. Part of that is because of the way they manage their properties, and they have site coordinators at all their properties, which allows them to better support their residents and allows their residents to just maybe have some calmer and whatever, better supported living situations. So for those reasons, we as staff recommend that the EDC approve these two resolutions, which formally recommend the pilot agreements to the Common Council. And so I'll just back the frame up and tell you this packet is enormous, and so I wouldn't be surprised if you all didn't comb through it. But it contains just the memo, which is an overview of both pilots, and then it contains a resolution, a project agreement, and then Glick's memos to us providing information about the project. So there's a lot in there on each project, but that kind of summarizes what's in there if you haven't had the chance to read through.
So
Any questions about that, or shall I pass to Janine?
So I have a question on the recommendation. I don't know what pages, I don't have page numbers, but underneath the second chart you gave us on with numbers, it says staff from ESD. Remind me what ESD is.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Economic and Sustainable Development.
Thank you. I know what
And
HAN
then-
is, I just didn't know what
Yeah,
ESD was.
I apologize. Sometimes I don't even realize when we're
That's
throwing
okay.
the acronyms around. I usually try to watch that.
Thank
And
you.
we'll get page numbers next time too. Oh, there was a question about what happens to where the pilot funds are deposited, and they do go into the general fund.
Okay.
The amount, the estimated amount, the 740 and the 900,000, that was assuming no growth in the levy, right?
In the levy or
Or
the
in
assessed
the
value?
assessed value, sorry.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's okay.
Which in reality, that'll change year over year, but and Janine can speak more, I mean, that's really her bailiwick, but as the asset ages, I assume that it'll go up and then
And then
it'll
they
go
come
down
down.
over time, so ultimately
Yeah,
I felt
so it
pretty
makes sense
comfortable
to- yeah.
leaving it there, so, yeah.
And
Maybe
why-
I'll pass to Janine to walk us through.
Sure. I'll go first and then I'll let Adam talk about the service coordination program. So we're really excited to rehab these properties. We just acquired Henderson Court at the end of December. It's in a great location, family property, 100% Section 8. So anyone that lives there is not paying more than 30% of their income in rent. And it's subsidized by old school housing assistance payment contracts that are no longer available. So by preserving them, we're preserving that affordability for those families at Henderson Court. Also at Cambridge Square, Bloomington, that property was initially developed by a group of investors that Gene B. Glick put together. And we take really good care of our properties, but cabinets after 45 years, they get old and they need replaced. So both of the rehabs will include all new kitchens. We put in granite countertops, new baths. We also take a hard look at mechanicals, We looked at whether or not, there's a couple of electrical panels that no longer have parts. So one of the projects will get all its electrical panels replaced. We do new appliances. We do elevator rehabs. Cambridge Square does have elevators, so those will be modernized. So we go in and we not only refresh the kitchens, the baths, the lighting, we also take care of health and safety items that, in terms of the electrical panels, we didn't know when we put them in all those years ago that they wouldn't be good anymore. But also on Henderson Court, when we purchased that property, we hadn't owned it all those years, so we will go in and make any health and safety improvements that are needed. We really do a great job. We do not displace the residents. We set up a contract directly with the hotel. We have a team, we have a special team that comes on site and works with the existing management team to make the relocation for the residents as painless as possible. It's usually 2 to 3 days that they need to be out of their unit. And like I said, it's a direct bill with the hotel, and then we also give them resources for food. And in the event that they have a family member or somebody else that they would prefer to stay with, we'll still give them like a small gift card for their trouble. One other thing that I wanted to point out is that we are definitely investing our own resources in the project as well. There's a $2.5 million sponsor note on Cambridge Square, Bloomington, and $2.3 million in deferred fee. So that is a $4.8 million investment in the project that we're making as well.
Janine, can you describe the deferred fee for the group and what that usually means for a developer?
Yes, so the deferred fee is part of the capital stack as a source and a use, but if it's not paid off in the 15-year period that the tax credits are claimed, then at the end of the project we would owe back the money. So the pilot really helps us pay off the deferred fee and also increase the debt to a higher amount than we would be able to do with an abatement or some other tool, because the term of the pilot runs beyond the term of the initial loan. So both of those tools are very important. In Henderson Court, since it's a recent acquisition, and as you guys may be seeing, there's a lot of investors that buy real estate. One of the things that happens when we buy one of these properties is that the foundation puts in its resources, and we may be paying a little more because we're paying for the long-term value of that Section 8 contract to those families. And Henderson Court is directly located by Country View, which was a property that we bought from the Community Reinvestment Foundation, rehabbed, and did a lot of good work there. So we really try to find the assets that somebody else is not going to love like we will, and or isn't going to make the type of improvements that we do. We also focus on other efficiency factors. If these properties don't already have them, we will go in and do low flow toilets. All of our water faucets and other tools that we install are low flow, energy efficient lighting, high efficiency furnaces if those are going in. We normally don't do water heaters at that time because I hear maintenance say they don't want to replace all 153 in 9 years later at the same time, so we just replace them as needed. But we really take a comprehensive look at what is needed to improve the properties. But we have made investments along the way, especially in a Cambridge Square, Bloomington, and we really appreciate you giving our pilot consideration.
So what about flooring and that sort of thing?
We do flooring in the kitchens and the entryways and the baths, and any of the ADA units that get approved, we do 100% of the flooring in those units. We don't do all the flooring when we rehab because that would require the resident to move out for a much longer period. But if the flooring was bad, or did need, replaced, we would do that on the turn, when that resident moved out. But if it was really terrible, it would be replaced, but that's not usually the case, for the property. So we try to do as much as we can, limit the impacts on the residents. And typically we will complete a project like each of these with 6 months of construction, and then all the interiors and items will be done. And just depending on when we finish, we might be done in December, but if we weren't able to get asphalt done before then we typically can't complete the asphalt until the spring. We also, if any sidewalks are not ADA accessible, that is part of the work plan as well. So if they don't have the rumble strips or the other tools, that is a requirement that we fix that at the time. And then if any of the bathrooms, entry points into the community room or other items, sometimes they were accessible 30 years ago and met the criteria then, but they will all be updated to current accessibility criteria as part of the rehab as well.
And walls and paint or anything like that?
Paint in the ADA units, walls, we make repairs and paint if needed, but no, paint is not typically part of the program.
Okay.
All right, Adam, you want to talk about the other good stuff?
Sure, happy to, and thank you everyone for allowing us to be here today. Glick and Glick Philanthropies has enjoyed a great relationship with the city and Monroe County as well for many years. We own 5 properties in Bloomington, and the 2 properties that are here before you today, I think are typical of Glick properties, and what we're trying to do with these 2 properties is typical of the larger strategy that we're implementing across Glick's entire portfolio. The G&B Glick Company's been around for almost 80 years. A lot of the properties that the Glicks own and that we are privately owned are 40 or 50 years old, and there's a large strategic initiative to position all those assets to remain quality, affordable housing for another 40 or 50 years. So the program that you see in front of you being applied to Henderson Court and to CS Bloomington is something that we're doing in states and cities across our entire footprint. The intention certainly is that we will continue to hold and maintain these assets for the benefit of the residents and for our own ownership in the communities in which we serve for a very long time. That is unique. Most tax credit developers are in the business to earn the fee, and I think that's certainly part of it for us. But the more important initiative or component of this is setting up the asset for decades to come. Something else that's unique about Glick and the properties that it owns, and has been mentioned a couple of times, is the Service Coordinator Program. We operate one of the largest Service Coordinator programs in the country. A Service Coordinator is an on-site, full-time employee who provides coordination and social services to the residents at that property at no charge. Both of these locations would receive a Service Coordinator. At elderly properties, the role of the Service Coordinator is to help those individuals age in place. And so a lot of the issues that a Service Coordinator may address are loneliness, boredom, medical management, family management, a lot of Medicare, a lot of Medicaid assistance, a lot of sort of basic living. Dealing with technology is something that comes up pretty often, but the goal is to help those elderly residents obviously remain safe and remain housed, but it's much less expensive for them to stay with us with a little bit of assistance than to go into a nursing home prematurely. On the family side, the needs are different. We still have service coordinators, but the goal of the service coordinator there is to help those families advance along a number of dimensions, that we call them internally, things like food security, job security, transportation, education, and the service coordinators will work one-on-one with those families. We have very strong service coordinators at our properties in Bloomington already. Country View and the Reserve in particular, we have two very strong service coordinators, and we have every reason to believe that the service coordinators at these locations, once rehab, will also be similarly strong. So they're coming into a pre-existing program. We have 75 plus service coordinators across the portfolio. We have regional service coordinator managers. We have a director of resident success who oversees the program. So it's a highly invested in program that we take a lot of pride in. So I'll stop there. I spoke a little bit about the reason why we're doing this and the service coordinator program. I guess I'll also add that, and I think Tim made a point to this last time we met, that affordable housing and the rehab of existing affordable housing unfortunately doesn't happen without subsidy, without government subsidy, or without, in some cases, charitable dollars being invested. In this case, the multi-million dollars of investment. And the pilot program has been set up by the state of Indiana to allow cities and towns to participate in that component. And it's in lieu of a property tax exemption. These properties, because, as mentioned earlier, will not qualify for property tax exemption because a for-profit investor purchases the federal subsidy, and that's where that subsidy comes into the deal. And so the pilot is intended as a stand-in in some ways, and it's intended to qualify as a stand-in for a property that would otherwise be property tax exempt. So a little bit of background on that, but still, even with federal subsidies and city and state provided mechanisms, every dollar is tight on these transactions, and as evidenced by the investment that we have to make through those notes. And we greatly appreciate your consideration of helping us preserve these properties.
Jane, you have a
Oh,
question?
I was just going to ask, so I've only ever heard them called payment in lieu of taxes, but is it always tax exemption? Like that's how the program was structured. So we're imagining it as a trade-in for greater support rather than paying taxes.
Yeah, that is
That's
certainly
how the program
true.
imagines it?
Yeah, that's certainly true with respect to Henderson, because Henderson is currently wholly owned by a 501c3, and so it qualifies for under the Indiana's general charitable statute because it's considered owned, operated, and used for a charitable purpose. So you could look at Henderson as coming back on the tax rolls, so to speak, but then, without getting too much in the weeds here, the way the pilot works is an exemption is applied to it, the pilot exemption, a different exemption, but then on top of that, there's the pilot contract where we agree to pay the pilot payments in exchange for the pilot exemption. So it's a little convoluted, but that's how it structurally works. With respect to CS Bloomington, it has not been owned by our housing foundation. It is not owned by a 501c3, so it has paid property taxes over time. But in order to make the dollars work on the rehab, the pilot is made available to for-profit owners as well as nonprofit owners. I would say what we're doing here with the pilot program is this is the intended use, and it is a routine use of the pilot statute, is to rehab and preserve affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
But I would not characterize it as we're taking CS Bloomington. It's not going to go on the tax rolls all of a sudden, whereas it has been. It's always been paying property taxes.
So why is the term 17 years? I don't know.
In order for it to be underwritten as having value to the lender, it has to run longer than the term of the loan, and the term of the loan is 16 years.
Okay.
So the pilot has to run 1 year longer in order for them to approve it as part of the known expenses.
Thank you.
Could you talk a little bit about the mechanism? So I know there's both state mechanisms and then internal to the pilot mechanisms to ensure that it's affordable housing for the next 45 years. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so once we close the project, we will sign a LURA and an extended use agreement that are recorded on the property, and the LURA is the land use, I don't know what the RD stands for. Restriction document, there we go, yes.
Yeah.
And so that says you cannot rent to people over 60% AMI, and we do have the extended use period as well, which IHCDA, our state agency that administers the tax credit program, has said you can no longer opt out of the extended use agreement. And so we will enter into that extended use agreement as well. And we have never opted out of one of those. And in fact, we have purchased a number of properties in their extended use agreements and then preserved them long term.
And then on that note, it's is that an agreement between the owner, or is it an agreement on the property itself? So should the property transfer to another owner, they have to preserve those agreements as well, or do they have a choice?
They do have to preserve those agreements as well because they run with the property. They are recorded at the recorder's office, and they stay in place.
Excellent. Excellent. And then, so two other follow-ups on that note is what tools are going to be available to you in the next round of improvements? I mean, because if the pilot runs for 17 years and the improvements that we're making, I mean, what's your sort of estimate on the life of those improvements?
So we try to make the improvements to last 35 to 40 years. That's what we target, and we have a really excellent maintenance program. We replace things when we're needed. We mill concrete every year on certain parts of the property. We have just a great team of maintenance folks and key items that we do for every property every year. When I first started at Glick, we used to fight with IHCDA about dryer vents. And I was so impressed. I was like, oh my, we blow our dryer vents out every year. Just the kinds of things of doing the ongoing maintenance that really preserves the lives of your property's assets is what we focus on. And that's part of, the electrical panels have lasted 50 years, but if there's not parts, we don't, and this is our chance to get them all right. We sewer scope every time. If there's any asbestos, we're addressing the asbestos. If there's radon, we install the radon systems. So we really take care of those items and intend to make the improvements to last as long as possible, as well as having the ongoing maintenance.
Excellent. Thank you.
No problem.
Other questions, comments?
I have a handful of others, but they don't know.
Huh?
I have a handful of other questions, just some really brief ones, but I want to give you
I think you still have the floor.
Okay. The other question was about the vacancy rate. I know it's currently at 5 and sort of projected to stay at 5. Could you talk a little bit about generally why? I mean, 5 is a fantastic vacancy rate, but why any vacancy rate is there at all?
So it's the investors require it to underwrite at the 5% vacancy rate, but our properties typically do not run lower than 3.
Great.
And CS Bloomington runs at 99%. It hardly has any vacancies. They just won't underwrite to that dollar amount. And Henderson Court is not that I think it's at 93%
Okay.
today.
Okay.
But we just recently took it over, and sometimes, maybe rents weren't collected, maybe the resident doesn't like the transition, but, you know, we will stabilize that. But our target is 97% on our
Excellent.
properties,
I'll add
especially with 100% Section 8.
I'll add a little Bloomington context for that. Our apartment association, I think, typically reports at 5 to 6%
Right.
as our average, and that's for our market rate college town units that have a lot of churn. So you can tell by the GLIC vacancy rate that they're really serving a more stable population of residents.
Yeah,
So,
that's excellent.
yeah.
That's excellent. And then, well, maybe my final question is, you know, is there anything in this proposed pilot that that you would change? Is it perfect for you?
It does work really well, and there's nothing I would change.
Cool.
So I think it's a better system than some of the other communities, so I'll just leave it at that.
Other
So-
questions?
Yeah, so you mentioned that you have these service coordinator program things, and so I'm wondering, like, is that the way that residents give feedback to your organization when they live there, or how does that process work?
It's one mechanism for sure. We also have on-site property managers and assistant property managers and leasing agents and maintenance supervisors and maintenance techs. And they're all available for residents to stop and talk to them if they have issues.
And do
we
you
also-
survey the residents at all, maybe?
We do. We have third
Okay.
parties that survey them, yes.
Okay.
And then we also, we have a call center here in Indianapolis that if a resident is not getting the satisfaction or the response that they would like, they can call a hotline, and that's manned by some people at our home office. Those the people who take those calls are GLIC employees. It's not a third party outsourced to another country hotline. And those service providers then coordinate with the on-site team, or if they can take care of the issue themselves, they will. But they will then escalate the issue to a property manager or a regional property manager.
Thank you.
And I will say also, in terms of the services, we are CORE certified, which is a national recognition, and that shows what we do at each property is we do survey the residents and tailor the services to their needs, and we must review that every 3 years in order to stay CORE certified. We also track metrics at our property, and where we have collected a lot of data, we can say things like the average value of the service coordinator to a household. Every household there might be like $158, but that's taking, you know, rental assistance, utility allowances, you know, other things that have a cash value to the families. So we track data and use those metrics to improve what we offer in terms of services, and we definitely ask residents what they would like.
These are all very good questions.
I said I was going to ask a final question, and then thought of a new one. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about, you know, general economic uncertainty, change, you know, lots of different things like that, and maybe this is both a question for Steph and but for you, like how are you factoring in? I mean, because we're thinking about updates, and you know that means materials and labor, and what happens if, you know, projections are like way off in terms of cost, and because within the pilot they don't actually have to do what they're proposing. I mean, the real agreement is it's going to be, you know, 45 years of affordability, right? I mean, and they're sort of saying what we intend to do is update the properties, et cetera. But what happens if they don't? Is there a you know?
Well, so the loan holder would hold us to the improvements that we
Of course,
said
right,
that we
okay,
would
yeah, that's
make.
a good point.
And one of the things that we do, once we have signed up our investor and we're moving forward, we go ahead and enter into an LOI with our general contractor so they can pre-purchase materials and we can make sure our pricing is good.
Excellent.
So we do really focus on that because it's a scary thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the for-profit tax credit investors that they put money into the deal in exchange for these dollar for dollar federal tax credits that they can use or they can sell. They are watchdogs. Because they are at risk of the federal government coming after them for the value of the credit if the deal doesn't go correctly. And so we sign all sorts of guarantees that we're gonna do this, that, and the other, and there's a tremendous amount of oversight from those folks on a regular basis with respect to budget, and certainly construction completion and all of those, all of those things.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's, yeah, that's a very good question as well.
And then in terms of a clawback, Isak, my laptop is frozen and dying right now, and so normally I would just search for the clause for what would dissolve the agreement if we were in the middle of it. So I might phone a friend and ask Margie if she can look that up really quickly. But I will say,
That's,
yeah,
I mean,
that's all
that
I'll
would be
say.
like terribly unlikely, just because of the other stakeholders involved.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, what we're doing, you know, I'm sort of thinking ahead of the next time I have to hear this, right? What we're doing is giving some type of a subsidy, a guarantee that allows them to go and get investors to do the work that they want to do.
Yep.
And, you know, and so, I mean, I get that mechanism, so I was just trying to make sure that I totally got that.
Yeah, well, I'll come ready to answer that question either way.
Yeah, well, and also the pilot agreement does have a provision in it stating that if Glick does not fulfill its part of the bargain, then the city can put Glick in default. And then the pilot ceases, and so it would go back to being fully taxable. So the benefit of that would go away.
Great.
In that, it's in section 3.2 and 3.3 of the pilot agreement.
Thanks.
Thank
Sorry
you so
my
much.
laptop is
No.
not cooperating
Yeah,
for some
you're
reason.
amazing. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? If none, can we hear a motion for resolution 2501?
A motion that resolution 2501 be recommended to the common council with a positive recommendation from this body.
I'll second it.
I think you're approving, so your resolution.
Oh, we approve. Okay, good. It's already
2501
resolution. Yeah,
and
we approve.
2502.
I motion that we approve said thing.
Do you want to approve both of them?
You can approve both if you want to.
I would motion to approve both,
I'll second
2501
both.
and 2502.
but happy to separate the question if someone has qualms.
Okay. And now technically, even though we've had most of the discussion, we should open the floor to discussion, so.
So you had 2 motions, 2 seconds. Just a procedural thing here.
Well, actually, we had one motion to approve.
We had a motion
I
and a
withdraw
second.
the first,
Oh, you did
the
withdraw?
first
Okay,
Aaron's,
okay, I missed the
Aaron's
withdrawal. Okay.
resolution.
All right.
So we have a motion and a second to approve it, the resolution 2501, the Cambridge Square pilot, and resolution 2502, the Henderson Court pilot. And once again, we're supposed to open for discussion. If there's no discussion, we can go to a vote.
I just have a general
Okay, go ahead.
comment,
Sure.
which is, you know, and I know we showed this before, but just again, both to Janine and Adam, just so grateful for the commitment to affordable housing, and particularly for this very low AMI being titled section voucher housing as well. And so it's just, I mean, something that, you know, personally I'm obviously in a lot of support of, we need more of in the community. And so just very grateful for, and just also the opportunity that you've had to speak on how great of a company you are and how you serve your residents and so on. And so I personally am very grateful.
Likewise, we've enjoyed, as I said earlier, a wonderful relationship with the city across the board and members of of Monroe County as well, and you folks are included in that, and we appreciate it.
Okay. just thought of something, because another meeting, we have Zoom people, we're supposed to do a roll call vote. Do we have a Zoom call?
We can do it to be on the safe side.
Okay, why don't we do a roll call? So, we have the motion in the second. We've had discussion. Can we have a roll call vote with regard to passing that motion?
Do you want us to call names? Okay. Tim Henke.
He's muted.
Tim, you're muted.
Okay.
You're
Can we
okay
take
with it?
that?
Yes?
Okay.
Thumbs up.
Multiple sides.
Okay.
Vanessa McCleary.
Yes.
Liz Vidal.
Yes.
Kurt Zorn.
Yes.
Isak Asari.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you,
Alright.
everybody.
Well, we're approved. So Adam and Janine, thank you so much for the time and the explanation.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
we appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Thank you all.
Oh, yeah.
Have a great afternoon.
You also.
Edie Sears, I had a little progress on one thing I was thinking about sharing. Do you?
I can do it, I can
Okay.
pull it up really quick.
So, at our first meeting, is that okay?
Yeah, we're moving to number 4 on the agenda. So
Okay.
it's general
Other business?
discussion.
Yeah. At our first meeting, we talked about what we really needed in order to support housing development. And if you just search in there, or you already have it. We talked about wanting to really be able to communicate about what incentives we have. So I just wanted to share the little bit of progress I've been making on kind of summarizing some of the incentives that we can offer locally, support from like state incentives that we can support, and then federal incentives that we want to make sure people know about. And then also, like with the tax credits, we want to make sure that if we're supporting a housing development project, that they're getting all the low-hanging fruit from a federal level. So this is incomplete, and it's not, it'll be made in a pretty form one way or another, but we will be able to start using this as a tool to help us help others.
Well, you know what, something that would be super useful, just building off the last conversation and looking at it, is thinking about where, like what's, like I get this sort of local versus state, but
Right.
thinking about the
End user.
lines of, the lines of authority, that the instrument, if you will, that allows that to happen. And so,
Mhm.
and then also the question of, so in other words, are we allowed to do EDC tax abatements because that there's a local ordinance that allows for that to happen?
Right.
Or is that, and then similarly, is there, you know, a big, like, we wish we had this tool locally, you know, particularly from my perspective, I'm really interested in, like, if there was a, you know, if such a thing could be established by an ordinance and you wish there was a tool that did not exist.
Like a revolving loan fund or something.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. I'd be really interested in working to,
Yeah.
figure out what that would
Yeah,
look like.
but I think that that's great feedback, and then even just mapping these out has been really helpful.
Right.
And I do, like, this is organized for my brain, but I think we'll get this integrated with the website in a way that allows people to get the information that they need, and maybe we'll filter it from an end user perspective. So, are you a housing developer? Are you
Well, yeah.
working
that's,
on
yeah,
on a commercial employment
right.
activity?
Right.
Yeah. But progress. So I just
Yeah,
wanted
it's
to share.
awesome.
Yeah.
Good.
It also might be cool to see what's being, like, either examples or, I mean, an exhaustive list would be also cool, but like, you know, here are the things that are currently using this tool, the things that are currently using this tool as well.
Yeah.
Especially as we think about, you know, from a city perspective, how we're trying to move towards outcome-based budgeting. So also that way you
Yeah.
get some metrics associated, like what are we tracking, you know, in terms of, sort of how all these tools are interacting with each other.
Right, like a GIS layer that shows where we've applied tax abatements
Right,
and what
right.
TIF revenue. I mean,
Right.
we should be able to do that this year. We sort of
Yeah.
started a map that leans in that direction. But yeah,
Or similar,
I think
if we've combined different tools together, where it's like actually we were able to take advantage of this one, and this one to create this. You know, I
Yeah.
think lots of those type of combos I think are just cool to see.
But I also think part of what will, to your point about construction costs going up and
Right.
all the economic uncertainty that we're facing now, we already had developers with impossible to close gaps coming to us
Right.
and asking for support, and now we're facing all these changes in the market. So
Right.
I think as as an organization, we're just gonna have to get more comfortable looking at ways to support this. Whereas in the past, I think the stance was almost more like, it's Bloomington, figure out a way or something like that. I don't know. So I don't need to belabor that.
Any other discussion?
Am I
Yeah, Tim.
unmuted, I think?
Yeah.
I'm back.
You're back.
I just want to, first off, I apologize for being muted. But Jane, I think your comments especially can be applied to the Hopewell project. You know, we need to step up and try to figure out what can we do, because there are massive gaps in accomplishing what was originally meant to be accomplished there.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
And I think we'll be working through some of that with the redevelopment commission, and Jessica McClellan, our city controller, has mentioned that she's mentioned publicly in redevelopment commission meetings that they're working to lay the foundation to establish a Hopewell TIF. So that will capture more increment and allow more resources for that project. But this list can be refined so that we can think exactly about what we can do at Hopewell. Hopewell, which is in an opportunity zone. And I've always had feedback that those haven't been super useful, but then I had a conversation with one local developer who said, oh no, it's great, I'm planning to hang on to this building, it's definitely gonna be a benefit. So I think it's just matchmaking.
Any other discussion? If not, I would note that our next meeting is Tuesday, April 15th,
Better do our taxes.
which is
How appropriate.
which is tax day.
It's your favorite day.
And for the first year, I don't have my taxes done yet because I don't have the mobility to do it. So. Oh well, it'll be done by the 15th. So, if there's no other business, then we stand or sit adjourned.